Sean Salisbury taking a few minutes to join us, and we appreciate it, here on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Good morning, Sean. My condolences. Obviously an incredibly sad couple days for everybody who knew John Clayton.
Yeah, I thank you for having me on. I'm having a hard time with this one, big time. And I can't imagine what's going on, not only with family, my best to his, John's sister, and to Pat, who I love, in the family. John was family to me. I just talked to him a couple weeks ago, and we were on each other's show, on his show and there for the longest time, but he comes on my show every Friday. And I was talking about him on my show this morning, and there's very few people that I've met. And John was covering the Seahawks back in 1986, and we have a lot of people we know in the industry. We all do, but my circle's small, and John is my circle. He's a big part of it, not just from one of the greatest TV partners ever. I was so honored to be on that as one of the, it was truly the first debate sports show on television, and John was a big reason why it worked. But a friend. When I left ESPN, the first person that contacted me and had nothing to do with Four Downs or me leaving ESPN, had everything to do with, he just wanted to check on me. John's the guy that would drive 1,500 miles to do a radio show for you, or grab a jacket if you were cold. And this isn't hyperbole. I loved him like family, and I'm so devastated by this, because if you go around this industry and talk to anybody, you'll never, and I mean never, find somebody who has anything but praise as a man, as a husband, as a worker, as a Hall of Fame worker, prepared. Like, I'm being serious about this now. Unfortunately, of all the years of playing and being around great players and coaches and broadcasters and talent, one that I'm not near as talented as all those guys is that I've never been around a guy who loved talking football on radio and or television or with people, and it did it so well as I have John. Not a coach, not a broadcaster, none of it. John's everything. When you talk about professional, John Clayton. When you talk about family man, John Clayton. When you talk about friend, he's one of the most loyal friends I've ever had in the business. And I've been through a lot of tears. Chris Morton and I were in him yesterday when he called me. And I know tributes all over the country, from the Mariners game, spring training. John Clayton's an icon in the business, but more importantly, a loyal, trusted friend.
Yeah.
And this is as hard on me as anybody. I lost my mom in the summertime, and I feel, and my kids were even saying, Dad, I can't believe it. I grew up watching you guys, and John's family to people that don't really even know him. And I knew him as well as anybody. He's one of the longest relationships I've had in the business, from 1986 to when he passed away. I miss him dearly. I'm going to suffer over this for a while, and I love to Pat and anybody and everybody in that area who knows all about John.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that, Sean. And again, our condolences. We knew him well, but I think the first time I ever saw and got to know who John was watching him with you, like so many other people did. I mean, one of the all-time great segments that anyone ever put together, the jock and the professor arguing passionately and sometimes kind of meanly about sports, all together, with this love and chemistry that went behind it. It's been copied many times. Heck, it's not too different from what Brock and I did here for a decade. How did it get put together? How did it get put together? Who put that together? Whose idea was it?
So glad you asked that, and thank you. What a high praise, and it worked. And we're fortunate it did. And John and I never took it for granted. And I can tell you this, you know that cartoon that is when the sheepdog, and I think is it the fox or the wolf are going to, in the canyon where they go to work, and the dog's trying to get him, and they clock it. Hey, Ralph, and I think it's Ralph and Fred or Ralph and George, old school cartoon. You clock in, you try to beat each other up, and then you walk home from work together with your lunch pails. That's John and I. And so people understand that was never scripted. Unlike maybe sometimes these guys nowadays do a great job of it. They're passionate, love it. But John and I were never told what to say. John and I were never told, you've got to take this point, Sean, you take this. There were things John and I agreed with as well, because it was organic for us, because we did. Matter of fact, they'd ask us 10 or so questions, and we would give them answers, but we'd do it apart. We never knew what the other one was going to say. And that's the honest-to-God truth. I still, to this day, not football, not quarterback play, not Benchwarmer's movie, not, what happened to ESPN. What I get asked most over the last 25 years is, do you and John Clayton hate each other? What people have to understand, that was organic. John Clayton and I were as close to each other as you could have been. We love as a friendship and as human beings together. And that was real. We'd get after it, and neither one of us were sensitive. Both of us can take criticism, but both of us were prepared. And the reason why it worked is because we both were prepared and had a blast with it. John's like quietly really funny. And he got some zingers that I say, wow. Well, how it started, we were standing in the newsroom. I was, because John would do a lot of his remote because all the stuff he had to do for ESPN, traveling around doing features and getting insider information. And one of the original Hall of Fame insiders is that I was standing there, one of my producers came up, and Mark Shapiro, who was a big boss, they said, Mark and I want to create this jock versus, they called it nerd or bookworm type of thing, right? John was so smart and so prepared. I said, all right, let's do it. And then they talked about the format. And that's how it started, standing in the newsroom for me with a guy named Mark Chrysler and Mark Shapiro, who was our big boss. And they put it on, and it became such a, I don't know if iconic word or whatever, it was like such a following. And it worked because of the way it worked and the respect we had, even though it was intense, yet laughs, yet one-line zingers. And I can remember George Bodenheimer, who was our CEO, for all the years we were doing it. I remember, and I was like, wow. You never really know other than when people talk how something's going to work. And chemistry you can't create. You either got it or you don't. And I can remember George Bodenheimer sending us photos of this thing, John and I both, and said, could you sign this for me? And it was like, this is George Bodenheimer. And when you're younger than this, you're like, gosh dang, this is our boss. I mean, so it was created standing in a newsroom thinking we need debate, but we need it for complete opposites. And in truth, John and I's passion were exactly the same. We just presented it different. And people think out there that all these years, you guys patched up. I said, patched up what? Well, we guys got after each other last week. We got after each other all the time. And we'd laugh about it more than what people we'd get off. And when we were done, get in the earpiece and say, John, great job. Yeah. John, great job. We loved it. We missed it. We wish it never would have left. And I don't know what John would say other than I know our friendship is even bigger than that was. But I can tell you this, John and I loved it. And I was honored that I got an opportunity to do it with him and to be not only his friend, but what I consider the greatest debate and co-worker partner that I've ever had. And it's kind of nice to be the original. We may not, nobody 10 years from now may be talking about us, but I can tell you this, John and I loved it, took great pride in it, and we're honored to be able to do it. That's how it started. It was a pretty simple way to start. And it had legs, and it still does.
Very cool, Sean, and thank you for sharing all of this. Quite frankly, that ability to like each other despite disagreeing is probably a pretty good metaphor for something we could use in this country today. Not just when it comes to sports, but well beyond it.
Anything.
Exactly. Hey, I got to run because every morning at 8:45. I talked to John, and so that segment is coming up next. I'm not entirely sure how it'll go. I plan to have a little moment of silence, and I think we're going to play some old funny bits of John, but this will be our first 8:45 segment. We've been talking to John every day at that time.
My prayers for you guys, and to John and Pat and his family, and to you guys. What an honor it is you would think about me to have me on. I appreciate it.
Well, you too, Sean. Thank you so much for sharing, and our heart goes out to you. There you go. There's Sean Salisbury, and no one is as connected to John, I would say, as Sean Salisbury is.